stranded alien woman was left to die. But one man decided she was worth saving. The crystalline sands of Kryos crunched beneath my boots as I stepped out of my shuttle. My atmospheric sensor beeped softly, warning of the rainbow-hued particles that made this planet dangerous. I pulled my breathing mask tighter and checked my handheld scanner. The artist collective I'd been tracking was supposedly hidden somewhere in these crystal dunes. Finding unique entertainment was my business, and word had it that the reclusive creators of Kryos produced experiences unlike anything in the settled systems. The scanner chirped, detecting a metallic signature over the next ridge. Not the biosigns I was hoping for, but worth investigating. My sensor gave another warning beep, more urgent this time. The toxic particulate count was rising faster than expected. I'd need to make this quick. I crested the ridge and stopped short. Half buried in the sand lay a shuttle with a breached side, definitely not abandoned by choice. I scrambled down toward it, the sand sliding beneath my feet. "Hello? Anyone aboard?" I called out, approaching the damaged craft. The entry hatch hung partially open. I wrenched it the rest of the way and stepped inside, activating my suit lights. The interior was a mess. Navigation panels sparked, emergency lights flashed erratically, and the life support systems emitted a dying whine. That's when I saw her. She was slumped against the far wall, her crystalline skin catching what little light remained in the cabin. A Lumari, far from home. Her normally bright crystal patterns had dimmed to an alarming gray. Not good. I rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, purple irises focusing slowly on my face. She recoiled immediately, pressing herself against the wall. "A human," she rasped, her voice weakened. "I don't need your help. Your shuttle's dead, and you don't look much better," I said, glancing at my wrist sensor. The readings were climbing into the red. "We need to move. Now." She tried to stand on her own but swayed dangerously. I reached out to steady her, but she flinched away from my touch. "Don't," she began. The ground beneath us shuddered violently, cutting off her protest. My sensors screamed warnings as toxic gas swirled outside in increasing concentration. "No time to argue," I said, quickly scanning the shuttle's systems. The damage patterns weren't random. Cut fuel lines, disabled communications. Someone wanted you stranded here. Her eyes widened slightly at that, but before she could respond I scooped her up into my arms. She was surprisingly lightweight. "Put me down," she demanded, attempting to struggle but managing only a weak push against my chest before collapsing against me. "My samples," she gasped, her eyes fixed on a container strapped to what remained of the navigation console. "I can't leave them." I grabbed the container with my free hand, noting the exotic spice odor that escaped when I jostled it. "Got them. Anything else essential?" She shook her head weakly, her dimmed crystals barely reflecting the emergency lights. Another tremor shook the shuttle. Outside, the rainbow haze had increased and obscured the landscape. I bolted for the exit, holding the Lumari woman while clutching her precious cargo. The sprint back to my shuttle was terrible. The toxic cloud descended rapidly, the particles burning where they touched exposed skin. My breathing mask's filter struggled with the concentration, and I could feel the beginning of a headache forming behind my eyes. I punched the entry code on my shuttle one-handed and practically dove inside as the hatch slid open. The door sealed behind us with a reassuring hiss as the air purification system kicked in. I laid the Lumari woman carefully on the small medical cot in the back of my vessel and set her container of samples beside her. "Setting emergency launch protocols," I announced, rushing to the cockpit. I quickly worked the controls, overriding safety procedures. The shuttle vibrated as the engines fired at full capacity. We lifted off just as toxic gas covered our previous position. Through the view screen, I watched the crystalline landscape disappear beneath the colorful poison. Once we'd reached a safe altitude, I engaged the autopilot and returned to check on my passenger. Her breathing had stabilized, but her skin remained disturbingly dull, the crystal patterns barely visible. The toxins affect Lumari biology severely, she admitted reluctantly, her voice stronger but still strained. Our crystalline structures absorb environmental compounds more readily than your skin. I rummaged through my medical supplies, pulling out a specialized antitoxin kit. This should help. It's designed for crystalline-based physiology. She watched with surprise as I prepared the treatment. I noticed the specific pattern of her crystals. E's distinctive arrangement across her forehead and cheekbones. You're from House Voss, aren't you? The spice trading family from the northern luminance of Lumar. I asked as I administered the antitoxin. Surprise flickered across her face, the crystals near her eyes momentarily brightening. Most humans don't bother learning such distinctions, she noted, studying me with renewed interest. Most humans aren't me, I replied with a half-smile. I'm Dash Mercer. I source entertainment and cultural experiences throughout this sector. Knowing who's who comes with the territory. Nyra Voss, she confirmed, wincing slightly as the antitoxin began to work. What were you doing on Kryos? It's hardly a tourist destination. I set the navigation coordinates for Helios Station before answering. Tracking down a rumored artist collective. They create sensory experiences that have become popular in exclusive circles. Artists on Kryos. She seemed genuinely surprised. The most dangerous places often produce the most profound art, I said. Though it looks like I'm not the only one who came to this toxic wasteland intentionally. What brought a high-ranking member of House Voss here alone? Nyra's expression closed, the brief openness vanishing. That's my business. I gestured to the container of samples. Spice trading, I assume. Kryos isn't known for its cuisine. You presume too much, she said coldly, though her eyes betrayed concern as she glanced at the samples. I checked the antitoxin's progress. The treatment will take several hours to fully work. We've got a 12-hour journey to Helios Station ahead of us. Helios, her expression soured. I need to return to Lumar. Your system still has toxin saturation. Helios has the best medical facilities in this sector, I explained. Besides, your shuttle was sabotaged. Someone didn't want you leaving Kryos alive. She was silent for a moment, processing this information. I could see her struggling with accepting help from a human. The Lumar weren't known for their high opinion of humanity's refinement. Why are you helping me? She finally asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I shrugged. Would you prefer I left you to die in a toxic gas storm? That's not an answer. No, I agreed, checking our course on the navigation display. It's not. The stars passed by as we accelerated away from Kryos. Nyra Voss watched me cautiously, clearly unused to relying on anyone, much less a human. Whatever had brought her to that dangerous planet was important enough to risk her life, and someone had tried very hard to make sure she didn't leave. I had a feeling this unexpected passenger was going to complicate my life in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The gentle sound of the ship's engines filled the cabin as I adjusted our course through the swirling gases of the Arcadian Nebula. Through the viewport, streams of violet and indigo twisted around us, occasionally illuminating the interior with flashes of bright light. I checked Nyra's vitals on the medical scanner. The antitoxin was working. Her crystalline patterns had begun to regain their luminosity, changing from dull gray to a subtle lavender. Her breathing had steadied too, no longer shallow and labored. How long until we reach Helios? She asked, her voice stronger than before. About 11 more hours. I tapped at the navigation console, confirming our trajectory. The nebula slows us down, but going around would add another day. Nyra moved on the medical cot, wincing slightly as she tried to sit up. I moved to help her, but she raised a hand to stop me. I can manage, she said, though the effort clearly strained her. I returned to the pilot's seat, giving her the space she seemed to need. The cabin wasn't large, just enough room for 2 passengers, basic medical equipment, and cargo storage. I'd retrofitted it for my business needs, sacrificing comfort for functionality. Your knowledge of Lumari physiology is unexpected, Nyra said after a while, watching as I adjusted the environmental controls. I was increasing the humidity and tweaking the light spectrum to better match Lumari preferences. Part of the job, I replied, finishing the adjustments. I've worked with Lumari clients before. Your people have very specific environmental needs, especially when stressed or injured. And what exactly is your job? Her tone carried suspicion. You mentioned sourcing entertainment, but that's rather vague. I swiveled my chair to face her. The antitoxin had continued its work. Her facial crystals now glowed with a healthier blue tint. I find unique cultural experiences and connect them with audiences. Some call me a cultural broker. I've sourced entertainment for several Lumari gatherings, actually. Last season I brought a gravity dance troupe from Europa to perform at House Thelan's centennial celebration. Her eyes widened slightly. That was your arrangement. I attended that performance. Then you saw how I operate. Those dancers received more for that single performance than they'd earned in the previous standard year. And your people experienced an art form they might never have encountered otherwise. Nyra's eyes narrowed, her crystals dimming slightly. So you profit from exploiting cultural curiosities. I laughed, not expecting such a direct challenge. I connect artists with audiences who appreciate them, not unlike connecting rare spices with those who value them. This comparison silenced her momentarily. Her crystals flickered in what I recognized as contemplation. I'd struck a nerve. That's different, she finally said, though with less conviction. Is it? We both facilitate cultural exchange. We both ensure fair compensation. The main difference is that you deal in tastes and I deal in experiences. I stood and moved to the galley unit, extracting 2 hydration packets. I handed one to Nyra, who accepted it with surprising grace. The antitoxin causes dehydration, I explained. You should drink regularly for the next few hours. She opened the packet and sipped cautiously. This has been adjusted for Lumari biochemistry. Like I said, not my first time working with your people. The hours passed more comfortably after that. I shared stories about performances I'd discovered across the settled systems, the sound poets of Titan's methane lakes, the shadow puppeteers who performed in Saturn's rings, the subharmonic choirs of Europa's subsurface oceans. Nyra listened with more interest than she probably wanted to show. In turn, she spoke of the complex spice trade her family oversaw, explaining how certain compounds could only be harvested under specific conditions on specific worlds. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected, given our rocky start. 6 hours into our journey, the communication console chimed. Nyra stiffened immediately. That's a Lumari frequency, she said, her crystals pulsing anxiously. I transferred the call to the main screen and stepped back, giving her privacy. But in the confines of the shuttle, I couldn't help overhearing. An older Lumari male appeared on screen. His expression hardened when he noticed the human vessel behind Nyra. Daughter, explain your situation immediately. Your emergency beacon activated, then went silent. Now you transmit from an unregistered human craft. Father, I encountered difficulties on Kryos. My shuttle was sabotaged. Nyra's voice had changed, becoming more formal, her crystal patterns automatically adjusting to match the conversational protocol. Sabotaged. By whom? Unknown but deliberate. This human, she glanced toward me, provided assistance when my life support systems failed. The elder Lumari's eyes moved to me momentarily, his crystals flashing with barely concealed disdain. Your mission status, he demanded. Returning his attention to Nyra, I secured the samples before the sabotage. We're en route to Helios Station for medical treatment and repairs. Helios, his crystals flared with disapproval. You should return to Lumar immediately. Father, the toxic exposure was severe. Helios has the necessary facilities. Her tone remained respectful but firm. The conversation continued, their formal speech patterns growing more complex as they discussed family expectations and proper protocols. I busied myself with navigation checks, trying to give them at least the illusion of privacy. When the call ended, Nyra remained silent for several minutes, her crystals fluctuating through patterns I couldn't interpret. Family complications? I finally asked. She sighed, a surprisingly human gesture. My father believes I'm too independent for a daughter of House Voss. This mission was meant to prove my value to our trading operations. And now you're returning with a human rescuer instead of your own shuttle. I imagine that wasn't in the plan. Her lips pressed into a thin line. No, it wasn't. The next few hours passed in relative silence. I monitored our course while Nyra rested, her body still processing the antitoxin. Occasionally she would check her precious samples, ensuring the container remained properly sealed. As we entered the outer approach to Helios Station, I broke the silence. Care to tell me what was so important about your mission to Kryos? What makes these samples worth nearly dying for? Nyra hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. Finally she opened the sample container just enough for me to glimpse crystalline fragments that seemed to change color as they caught the light. This is Kryos bloom. It forms only during the seasonal transition when the crystal sands react with the atmospheric changes. It creates a flavor compound unlike anything else in the settled systems. Her voice carried genuine passion. In culinary applications, it produces a reactive taste experience that changes based on the consumer's biochemistry. Sounds valuable. It is, and exceedingly rare. The window for harvest is merely days, and the conditions this season were particularly treacherous. She sealed the container carefully. My family has exclusive contracts with 3 major culinary consortiums, but the competition grows more aggressive each harvest. Aggressive enough for sabotage. Her crystals dimmed momentarily. Perhaps, though I didn't expect such direct methods. The navigation console chimed, indicating final approach procedures. Through the view screen Helios Station came into view. The outer rings gleamed with artificial sunlight, while the central hub pulsed with the blue glow of the station's core reactor. Listen, I said, beginning pre-docking procedures. I need access to the station's artistic underground for my own mission. You need to secure your samples and investigate the sabotage. We could assist each other. I kept my tone casual, though the suggestion was calculated. I know parts of Helios that a Lumari aristocrat wouldn't typically access, and your family name would open doors that remain firmly closed to someone like me. Nyra watched me with those intense purple eyes, her crystals changing through patterns of consideration. A temporary arrangement only. She finally agreed as the station grew larger in our viewport. The docking protocols initiated automatically, bright guide lights directing us toward an available berth. Of course, I replied, hiding my satisfaction. Purely practical. The docking clamps engaged with a muffled thunk, securing the shuttle to Helios Station. What had begun as a simple rescue had somehow transformed into a partnership. The gleaming docking bay hatch slid open, revealing Helios Station's upper ring bathed in artificial sunlight. After the cramped confines of my shuttle, the vast, open space of the arrival terminal felt almost overwhelming. I grabbed my essentials bag and stepped onto the polished floor of the station. Nyra followed, her movements still slightly stiff from the lingering effects of the toxin exposure. 2 uniformed station officials approached us, their expressions professionally neutral, until they noticed Nyra. The change was immediate. Both officials straightened their postures, and their faces transformed from bureaucratic indifference to eager attentiveness. Lady Voss, the taller official said, bowing slightly, we had no notification of your arrival. Please accept our apologies for the standard reception. Nyra inclined her head slightly, her crystals pulsing in what I recognized as a formal acknowledgement pattern. The circumstances of my visit were unexpected. I require medical assessment and temporary accommodations. Of course, we'll arrange everything immediately. While they fawned over Nyra, 3 security officers in the distinct blue-gray uniforms of Helios Station approached me. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered woman with close-cropped hair, stepped forward. Sir, we need you to come with us for routine questioning. I'd been through this before. Routine questioning on Helios was rarely routine, especially for independent operators like me. What's this about? I asked, keeping my voice level. Your recent activities in the Arcadian sector have triggered several security protocols, she said, her hand resting not so subtly on her stunner. I'm a registered cultural broker with all the proper. He is under my house's protection. Nyra's voice cut through our exchange like a blade. She stepped between me and the security officers, her crystalline skin suddenly shimmering, with an intensity that made the officers blink, and step back. This human provided critical assistance that saved my life. House Voss acknowledges this debt, and he travels under our protection until such time as we deem the obligation fulfilled. The security officer looked from Nyra to me and back again, clearly weighing her options. A Lumari aristocrat's declaration of protection wasn't something to dismiss lightly, especially one from House Voss. We still need to process his. You may forward any security concerns to my family's legal representatives. Nyra interrupted, her crystals pulsing in a pattern that even I recognized as one of dominance and authority. I trust that won't be necessary. The officer backed down. No, Lady Voss, that won't be necessary. I kept my expression neutral, though inwardly I was impressed by Nyra's commanding presence. The officials quickly escorted us through a private customs channel, bypassing the usual delays and scrutiny. That was unexpected, I murmured as we entered a lift that would take us to the medical level. A debt is a debt, Nyra replied simply. Besides, separation would be inefficient given our agreement to assist each other. The medical assessment was mercifully brief. Helios boasted some of the best xenobiological facilities in the sector, and the staff confirmed that the antitoxin had worked effectively. Nyra would need rest and additional nutrient supplements for several days, but no lasting damage had occurred. After securing accommodations, a surprisingly luxurious suite arranged by the station officials for Nyra, with an adjoining room for me, we agreed to begin our investigations. 3 hours later, we moved through Prosperity Deck, the heart of Helios Station's commercial and social elite. Suspended gardens floated at various levels, providing semi-private meeting areas where wealthy merchants and aristocrats conducted business amid exotic flowers and gravity-defying water features. Nyra had changed into formal attire that emphasized her status, a flowing ensemble of iridescent fabric that complemented her crystalline features. I wore the best outfit I had, which wasn't saying much, but was at least clean and free of the toxic residue from Kryos. You navigate these circles well, I observed, as Nyra led us through the space, acknowledging greetings from various high-ranking individuals with practiced ease. I was trained from childhood for these environments, she replied. Social commerce is the foundation of House Voss's operations. I watched how effortlessly she engaged with merchants and station officials, extracting information through seemingly casual conversation. Her royal bearing opened doors that would have remained firmly closed to me. After several such exchanges, we paused in one of the floating gardens, this one designed to resemble a miniature Lumari crystal grove. The privacy field hummed softly around us, ensuring our conversation remained private. My sabotaged shuttle wasn't random, Nyra said, her voice low despite the privacy field. Someone knew about my trading mission. How can you be sure? 3 separate contacts mentioned unusual interest in Kryos bloom shipments. The timing is too precise to be coincidence. Her crystals dimmed slightly. Someone knew exactly when I would be harvesting and deliberately stranded me there. Any ideas who? I asked. Several possibilities. House Thelen has competed with us for generations. The syndicate always seeks to expand their contraband operations into legitimate trade. And then there are the corporate entities. She looked troubled, her crystals changing to a contemplative pattern. I might have contacts who could help narrow it down, I offered. But they operate in different circles than yours. Nyra's eyes met mine. Show me. As evening approached, I led Nyra away from Prosperity Deck and its artificial sunlight. We descended through progressively less polished sections of the station, finally reaching a maintenance hatch marked only with a faded warning sign. The underspire, I explained, inputting an access code that definitely wasn't standard issue, where Helios keeps its heart beating. The hatch opened to reveal a labyrinth of repurposed maintenance tunnels illuminated by strips of mismatched lighting. What had once been purely functional spaces had been transformed into a thriving underground community. Food stalls offering cuisine from dozens of worlds lined the main corridor. Artists displayed their works on the curved walls. Musicians played instruments I was certain had never been catalogued in any official registry. Nyra's crystals pulsed with what I recognized as surprise and wariness. This exists beneath Prosperity Deck. Stations this size always develop unofficial sections. This is where the real culture of Helios lives. I guided her through the crowds, noting how people regarded her with curious glances but without the deference shown on the upper decks. Here, her status meant less than her novelty as a Lumari visitor. We arrived at our destination, a bar called the Gravity Well, tucked into what had once been an environmental control hub. The establishment's owner, Jax, was working behind the counter, all three of his arms in motion as he prepared drinks with practiced efficiency. "Dash," he called out upon seeing me. "Thought you were chasing down those Kryos artists." "Plans changed," I replied, claiming 2 seats at the counter. "Jax, this is Nyra. She's helping me with a project." The Jovian's compound eyes studied Nyra with undisguised interest. "House Voss, if I'm reading those crystal patterns right. Don't get many of your kind down here." Nyra seemed momentarily taken aback by his directness but recovered quickly. "A pleasure to meet you. What brings you to my humble establishment?" Jax asked, his middle arm already preparing drinks without awaiting our order. "Information," I said. "About anyone asking questions regarding Kryos, both entertainment and trade." Jax's movements slowed slightly. "You're not the only one interested in that particular intersection." He slid 2 glasses toward us, the contents changing colors in response to the bar's ambient lighting. "Muriel might know more. She's been picking up chatter from all levels of the station lately." As if summoned by her name, a human woman appeared from the crowd. Her arms, neck, and what was visible of her chest were covered in data projection tattoos, animated ink that scrolled with information streams pulled from various networks. "Dash Mercer," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Back on Helios and already digging into trouble." "Hello, Muriel," I replied. "We're looking for information about Kryos operations." Her tattoos rippled, data streams changing as she accessed different information channels. "Interesting timing. There's been increased traffic about Kryos across multiple secure networks." She gestured for us to follow her to a booth in the corner with additional privacy screening. Once seated, Muriel's tattoos projected a corporate logo onto the table's surface, a stylized spiral with the words Sensoria Unlimited beneath it. "They've been all over both spice trade and entertainment acquisition channels," she explained. "Aggressive moves in both markets, especially anything involving Kryos resources." "I've encountered them in the entertainment sector," I said. "But they usually focus on mass-market experiences, not the specialized cultural offerings I deal in." "They're expanding," Muriel replied, her tattoos displaying financial charts that scrolled too quickly for me to follow. "Major capital infusion from anonymous investors. New executive team with experience in luxury commodities." Nyra leaned forward, studying the projected information. "They've approached my family 3 times in the past year, seeking partnership in our spice trading operations." We declined. Muriel and I exchanged glances. "They're trying to corner both markets," I realized aloud. "The rare compounds from Kryos have applications in both sectors, sensory enhancement for entertainment and flavor profiles for culinary experiences. My family has refused their partnership offers 3 times, Nyra repeated, her crystals darkening with concern. "The last rejection was delivered just before my mission to Kryos." Muriel's tattoos swirled into a new pattern. "According to my sources, Sensoria recently acquired a smaller security firm with operations in the Arcadian sector. The implications settled heavily between us. A corporation with the resources to sabotage a shuttle and the motivation to eliminate competition in 2 specialized markets." We thanked Muriel and Jax for their information and began making our way back toward the upper levels of the station. The route back seemed longer somehow, the transition between the vibrant underspire and the sterile corridors of official Helios more jarring than before. As we entered a less crowded passage, Nyra spoke quietly. "If Sensoria is behind the sabotage, they won't stop with one attempt." Agreed. "They've invested too much to back off now." We approached an intersection where the corridor narrowed. As we turned the corner together, our arms brushed against each other. The contact was brief, barely more than a whisper of touch, but Nyra's reaction was immediate and striking. Her crystals resonated with a sudden iridescent pulse that rippled across her skin. The pattern was unlike any I'd seen before, intense, almost intimate in its luminosity. She quickly stepped away, composing herself and suppressing the crystal reaction with visible effort. Her eyes deliberately avoided mine. I pretended not to notice, focusing instead on the path ahead. But the image of that unexpected crystal resonance lingered in my mind, along with the realization that my interest in our partnership was becoming more complicated than I had anticipated. We should develop a strategy, I said, keeping my tone professionally neutral as we entered the lift that would return us to the upper decks. Yes, Nyra agreed, her own voice carefully controlled. It seems our separate missions have become more entangled than either of us expected. The lift carried us upward, leaving the underspire behind but taking its revelations with us. A few hours later, I woke before the station's artificial dawn. The revelations from our visit to the underspire lingered in my mind as I stared at the ceiling of my adjoining room. Sensoria Unlimited had the means, motive, and opportunity to sabotage Nyra's shuttle. They were targeting both the rare spice trade and the entertainment sector I operated in. The sound of movement in the main suite told me Nyra was already awake. I dressed quickly and found her reviewing data on a portable display screen, her crystals pulsing in focused patterns as she scrolled through information. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Lumari require less rest than humans," she replied, not looking up from the screen. "I've been researching Sensoria's public activities. I moved to the food synthesizer and programmed it for strong coffee." "Find anything useful?" "They're hosting a reception this morning, in what your station calls the Celestial Garden." She finally looked up, her purple eyes meeting mine. "An opportunity." The coffee materialized in the dispenser, aromatic steam rising from the cup. "For infiltration?" "Precisely." She switched off the display. "My family name will secure entry. Once inside, we can gather intelligence on their operations." I took a sip of coffee, considering the plan. "I can bring surveillance equipment, small enough to avoid detection." "Can you operate inconspicuously?" The question carried no insult, just practical assessment. "I've worked plenty of high society events. I know how to blend in when needed." She nodded, apparently satisfied with my answer. "I'll prepare appropriate attire." 2 hours later, we stood at the entrance to the Celestial Garden. The bioengineered terrarium occupied Helios Station's uppermost dome, offering breathtaking views of space through its transparent ceiling. Inside, alien flora from a dozen worlds created a lush environment that made visitors forget they were on a space station. Nyra had transformed herself. She wore traditional Lumari formal attire, layers of iridescent fabric that complemented and enhanced her crystalline features. The garment seemed to amplify her natural luminosity, making her nearly impossible to ignore. Every movement caused cascades of light to play across her body. "You look," I started, then stopped, unsure of the appropriate compliment. "Conspicuous," she finished for me. "That's the intent. I'll draw attention while you operate unnoticed." The plan was simple but effective. Nyra would engage with Sensoria executives directly, leveraging her family name to discuss potential business arrangements. Meanwhile, I would circulate through the crowd, planting tiny surveillance devices developed by one of my less legal contacts on Helios. The reception guard scanned Nyra's credentials and immediately straightened. "Lady Voss, we're honored by your presence. Please enter." We separated once inside, Nyra gliding toward a cluster of corporate executives while I drifted toward the refreshment table, pocketing a few hors d'oeuvres while surveying the room. The Celestial Garden lived up to its name. Phosphorescent plants provided ambient lighting that complemented the starscape visible through the dome. Floating platforms supported miniature ecosystems while gravity-defying water features created impossible cascades between different levels. I recognized several Sensoria executives from my research. Nyra Vex, their new acquisitions director, stood near the center of the room, her augmented eyes glowing faintly blue as she engaged with various guests. I moved casually through the crowd, placing tiny devices at strategic locations. Each one no larger than a grain of sand, they would transmit audio and limited visual data to a secure receiver. I placed one beneath a decorative table, another on a support pillar, a third near the executive gathering area. Across the room, Nyra performed her role perfectly. Her crystalline features and formal bearing drew curious glances and eager introductions. I watched as Nyra Voss herself approached Nyra, clearly recognizing the opportunity presented by a Voss family member. I continued my circuit, placing devices while maintaining the demeanor of a slightly bored guest. After 30 minutes, I had positioned 12 surveillance units throughout the garden. Near a phosphorescent tree with branches that swayed despite the absence of wind, I paused, pretending to admire the view through the dome. Nyra appeared moments later, strategically positioning herself beside me. "They're monitoring shipping contracts to Kryos," I whispered, without looking at her, maintaining the pretense of two strangers admiring the same vista. "And they've bribed officials to delay your competitors." "How extensive?" she asked, her voice equally low. "Systematic. They're creating artificial scarcity to drive up prices. They approached me directly, offered a partnership arrangement that would grant them exclusive distribution rights. I expressed polite interest while suggesting my family would require substantial guarantees." Her crystals pulsed subtly. "We have 20 minutes before they expect me to rejoin their conversation." I nodded slightly. Enough time for me to place the remaining devices. We separated again. I finished my circuit while Nyra rejoined the executives, her crystalline features capturing and reflecting light in ways that made her the center of attention wherever she moved. When the reception concluded 2 hours later, we left separately as planned, reconvening at a transit hub 3 levels down. "The surveillance network is active," I confirmed, checking the receiver in my pocket. "We'll have access to their conversations for the next 12 hours before the power cells deplete." Nyra's formal demeanor had relaxed slightly, now that we were away from the reception. "We should proceed to your artist contact, while we wait for useful intelligence." The transition from the opulent celestial garden to cargo level 6 was stark. We descended through progressively more utilitarian sections of the station, eventually reaching industrial cargo bays where massive shipments from across the sector were processed. I led Nyra through a maze of storage containers to a repurposed maintenance room that had been converted into a makeshift studio. The door was unmarked except for a small symbol etched into the metal, a crystalline pattern that matched the unique formations of Kryos. I knocked in a specific rhythm. After several seconds, the door slid open to reveal a humanoid figure whose skin resembled the crystalline sands of Kryos itself, not reflective like Nyra's, but opaque, with depth and texture that changed as the figure moved. "Dash Mercer," the figure said, voice resonating through crystal structures rather than conventional vocal cords. "You return at a perilous time." "Vela," I greeted the sculptor. "This is Nyra Voss of House Voss. We're investigating Sensoria's activities." Vela's crystalline features reconfigured in what I recognized as surprise. A Lumari aristocrat and a human entertainer, unexpected allies. The sculptor stepped aside, allowing us to enter the studio. Inside, the space was transformed. Sculptures of living crystal grew from various surfaces, each capturing and refracting light in patterns that created not just visual beauty but emotional resonance. The air itself seemed to vibrate with subtle harmonics generated by the crystal formations. "Your work has evolved," I noted, genuinely impressed by the advancement in Vela's art since my last visit. "Necessity drives innovation." Vela gestured toward a particularly complex formation. "This piece contains emotional impressions of Kryos during the last bloom cycle, the one you were seeking when you found your companion instead." Nyra approached the sculpture, her own crystals responding subtly to its resonance. "This captures the essence of Kryos bloom," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "The same compounds my family trades. Art and commerce often draw from the same wells," Vela replied, "which is why Sensoria pursues both." I moved closer to the sculptor. "They've approached you 3 times in the past month. Exclusive contracts, generous terms." Vela's crystalline features rearranged in what I recognized as contempt. in exchange for proprietary techniques and client relationships. And you refused, I guessed. I create experiences, not products. Vela turned to a workbench where a half-formed sculpture pulsed with inner light. But they are persistent. The last representative made veiled threats regarding my residency status on Helios. Nyra stepped forward. My family can extend protection through our trading networks. Legal residency under cultural exchange provisions. Vela's crystal structure changed, patterns realigning in consideration. Why would House Voss concern itself with a single Kryos? Our interests align against a common threat, Nyra explained. And she glanced at me briefly. I've recently gained appreciation for the importance of cultural preservation. The sculptor studied Nyra for a long moment. Crystal structures vibrating in assessment. Very well. I will share what I know of Sensoria's approaches to local artists in exchange for this protection. For the next hour, Vela detailed Sensoria's systematic campaign to control artistic output on Helios, exclusive contracts, incentives, threats when necessary. The corporation was particularly interested in artists working with materials from the Arcadian Nebula, especially Kryos. They seek to integrate rare compounds into entertainment experiences. Vela explained, chemical compounds that enhance sensory reception when properly processed. The same compounds that make Kryos bloom valuable in the spice trade. Nyra realized, precisely. The boundary between taste and experience is more permeable than most realize. We left Vela's studio with promises of continued communication and Nyra's formal guarantee of protection. The sculptor gave us one final piece of information, the location of a former Sensoria employee who might provide greater insight into the corporation's internal operations. By station evening we had made our way to maintenance shaft 12G. Deep in the infrastructure sections of Helios. Few station residents ever ventured this far into the mechanical systems that kept the habitat functioning. Exposed pipes carried various fluids, while power conduits made low noises with energy. The lighting was utilitarian. Your contact specified this junction, Nyra asked skeptically, her crystalline features catching and amplifying the sparse light. According to Vela, yes. I checked the coordinates again. This is where the former employee agreed to meet us. We waited for 15 minutes before a slight figure emerged from the shadows of an adjacent shaft. The woman wore maintenance coveralls and carried herself with the hyper-awareness of someone accustomed to looking over her shoulder. You're seeking information on Sensoria, she said without preamble. Not a question. We are, I confirmed. Why should I risk helping you? Her eyes darted between us, stopping briefly on Nyra's distinctive features. Nyra stepped forward. Because Sensoria threatened your position when you questioned their acquisition methods. The woman's expression hardened. You've done your research. Enough to know you were their communications security specialist before your sudden departure, I added. A long pause as she considered her options. Finally she reached into her pocket and extracted a small data chip, access codes to their private communications network. Still valid for another 36 hours before the encryption rotates. I accepted the chip. This is generous. What do you want in exchange? Make them hurt. Her voice held no emotion, just cold determination. They destroyed my reputation, made sure no station employer would risk hiring me. We'll do what we can, I promised. There's something else, she added, already backing toward the shadows. They're planning something called Operation Prism. I don't know details, but it's discussed only on their most secure channels. Whatever it is, they're accelerating the timeline. Before we could ask more questions, she disappeared into the maintenance shaft's darkness. The encounter had lasted less than 2 minutes. Not exactly forthcoming with details, I observed as we made our way back toward the main station. But potentially valuable nonetheless, Nyra replied, her crystals pulsing thoughtfully. We returned to my temporary quarters, a modest room I maintained on Helios for extended visits. I activated the strongest privacy field my limited budget allowed and inserted the data chip into my secure terminal. The information unfolded before us. Internal messages, financial transactions, shipping manifests. Sensoria's private communications network contained a wealth of corporate intelligence. Look at this, Nyra directed, pointing to a series of transactions. They've acquired controlling interest in 3 independent shipping companies that service Kryos. I scrolled through personnel files and hired security specialists with military backgrounds. This isn't standard corporate expansion. For hours we pieced together fragments of information, constructing a comprehensive picture of Sensoria's operations. The corporation had undergone a dramatic change in strategy over the past year, aggressively moving to control supply chains for rare materials from the Arcadian Nebula, particularly those from Kryos. Here it is, I said finally, accessing a restricted strategic planning document. Their full plan encrypted but accessible with the codes we have. Nyra leaned closer, her shoulder nearly touching mine as we read the document together. The proximity sent a subtle awareness through me that I tried to ignore. They're creating a monopoly, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger, controlling the unique compounds found only in the Arcadian Nebula to dominate both luxury entertainment and rare spice markets. I scrolled through the document. By controlling the raw materials, they control both industries. Your family's spice trade, my entertainment sourcing. They're eliminating independent operators from both sectors simultaneously. The sabotage of my shuttle was just the beginning, Nyra noted, her crystals dimming. They'll target anyone who threatens their control of the supply chain. I was about to respond when a soft alert sounded from my security system. I quickly switched to the external camera feed. Multiple figures approaching from both directions, I said, immediately standing. Moving with purpose and coordination. Corporate security, Nyra concluded, her crystals pulsing with alarm. We need to move, now. I disconnected the data chip and secured it in an inner pocket, then grabbed my emergency pack, always ready for quick departures in my line of work. Nyra moved with similar efficiency, securing her spice samples in a concealed pouch within her clothing. How did they find us? Questions for later, I replied, moving to a maintenance hatch in the floor that wasn't on the station's official schematics. This leads to service corridors. Most security teams don't know about these access points. I opened the hatch just as the security alert chimed again, indicating imminent breach of the main door. We descended into the narrow passage below, and I sealed the hatch behind us moments before hearing the distinct sound of the door being forced open. The service corridor was dimly lit, designed for maintenance drones rather than human passage. We moved quickly, hunched slightly to avoid the low ceiling. We need to reach the lower levels, I whispered as we navigated the narrow space. There are places to hide in the underspire. A distant sound of pursuit traveled through the corridor. They had discovered our escape route faster than I'd anticipated. They're familiar with these passages, Nyra observed, her voice calm despite the situation. Sensoria's been on the station longer than I realized. They've mapped the unofficial routes. We increased our pace, taking turns at junction points in hopes of confusing our pursuers. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind us. At a 4-way intersection, I hesitated momentarily, trying to orient myself. Nyra's crystals provided just enough illumination to see the path markers. This way, I decided, choosing the passage that would lead us toward one of the vertical access shafts. As we ran through the increasingly narrow corridor, my hand found Nyra's. I reached for her instinctively, intending only to guide her through the darkened passage, and for the first time she didn't pull away. Her hand closed around mine, the smooth crystalline surface of her skin cool against my palm. I felt a subtle vibration where we touched, her crystals responding to the contact in ways I didn't understand but could definitely feel. We ran together through the station's hidden arteries, connected not just by circumstance now, but by choice. Her grip was firm, resolute, matching the determination I felt as we fled the agents pursuing us. The abandoned observatory dome stood ahead, its curved transpersistal surface, dulled by years of cosmic dust. We'd navigated the service corridors for over an hour, constantly changing direction to throw off our pursuers. Nyra's hand was still in mine, as we approached the sealed entrance. "You're certain this place is secure?" she asked. I released her hand to access the outdated control panel beside the entrance. "No one's used this observatory since they built the new Stellar Research Center 5 years ago. Station records list it as decommissioned and scheduled for repurposing." The panel flickered to life under my touch. I input an access code, one I'd acquired through less than official channels during a previous job on Helios. "How many abandoned spaces do you have access to on this station?" Nyra asked as the heavy doors groaned open. "Enough to stay useful." I gestured toward the darkened interior. "After you." We stepped inside, and I sealed the door behind us. The observatory dome was exactly as I remembered it. Workstations ringed the perimeter, covered in protective sheets. The transpersistal dome above showed the Arcadian nebula, with faint purples and blues lighting the room. "Environmental controls first," I said, moving to a dusty console near the entrance. After a few minutes of work, the life support systems buzzed to life. Lights flickered on at minimal brightness, and the air circulation began freshening the room. Nyra moved toward the center of the room. "It's beautiful," she said softly. I busied myself with securing our temporary refuge, checking the integrity of the doors and activating a simple alert system that would warn us of any approach. From my emergency pack, I retrieved the essentials: water purifier, nutrient bars, basic medical supplies, and a compact thermal blanket. Not exactly luxury accommodations, I apologized, setting up a small living area in the section furthest from the entrance, but it should keep us off Sensoria's radar for a couple of days. Nyra finally turned away from the nebula view, surveying our makeshift camp. "I've endured worse conditions during trade expeditions. There's an environmental control panel over there." I pointed to a small console near one of the workstations. "You can adjust it to your preference. I know Lumari physiology responds better to higher humidity and specific light spectrums." Surprise briefly registered in her expression. She moved to the panel and began making adjustments. The lighting changed subtly, taking on a warmer hue, and the air grew noticeably more humid. "Your kind avoids extended contact with humans," I observed as I continued organizing our limited supplies. It wasn't an accusation, just an acknowledgement of the obvious tension between us. Nyra's hands paused over the controls. "Most humans lack the patience to understand Lumari communication nuances," she admitted after a moment. "It creates complications." "Your crystal patterns," I ventured. "They're language as much as biology, aren't they?" "Both and neither." She completed her adjustments and turned to face me. "They reflect emotional and physiological states, but also convey meaning that words cannot. Most humans see only the surface beauty. Like tourists admiring the pretty lights," I suggested. Her lips curved slightly. An apt comparison. I pulled out 2 nutrient bars from my pack and offered one to her. She accepted it, with a nod of thanks. "What will Sensoria do next?" she asked, examining the bar before taking a cautious bite. "They'll search the main station levels first, then expand to the non-residential areas. Standard security sweep." I chewed thoughtfully on my own meal. "But they might not get that far. My guess is they're operating without official station authorization, which limits their reach. Unless they have contacts within station security." "Always a possibility." I couldn't argue with her assessment. "But we have the advantage of evidence. The data we collected proves their involvement in your shuttle sabotage, and their attempts to monopolize both our industries." Nyra nodded, but concern still lingered in her expression. "My family will expect contact soon. They monitor my missions closely, especially solo operations." I hadn't considered the complication of her family obligations. "Will they send someone looking for you?" "Eventually. House Voss has significant resources dedicated to protecting family assets." Her tone made it clear that she included herself among those assets. The implications hung between us. If Sensoria didn't find us first, Nyra's family might, and from what little she'd shared, they wouldn't approve of our partnership. We spent the next few hours securing the observatory and monitoring station communications through a small receiver I'd brought. Sensoria had indeed launched search operations, but they were concentrating on the commercial and residential sections. So far, our hiding place remained secure. As artificial night fell across the station, marked by the dimming of exterior lights visible through the dome, we settled into an uneasy evening routine. The small thermal blanket and the limited floor space forced a proximity that neither of us had anticipated. "Take the blanket," I offered. "I'll use my pack as a pillow." "The thermal properties are insufficient for single-user warmth," she replied practically. "Sharing would be more efficient." Her suggestion surprised me, but I recognized the logical approach behind it. We arranged ourselves awkwardly under the blanket, maintaining a careful distance between our bodies. The dome's thermal systems kept the temperature comfortable, but the metallic floor remained cool beneath us. Nyra's crystals gave off a faint glow in the darkness, changing through subtle patterns that I couldn't interpret. Above us, the nebula drifted in slow, cosmic currents. "Have you ever been to the Arcadian homeworld?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Once as a child, my father negotiated a major spice contract with their council of elders." Her voice softened with the memory. "Their crystal cities make Lumari architecture seem primitive by comparison. I've heard the rumors about their sensory theaters, entertainment venues that supposedly create experiences so vivid they're indistinguishable from reality." Nyra turned her head toward me. "Those aren't rumors. I experienced one such simulation. It was transformative." Our conversation drifted naturally from there. We shared stories of worlds we'd visited, cultures we'd encountered. Nyra described the famous crystal gardens of Lumari, where her family maintained an ancestral estate dating back 12 generations. I told her about the subterranean music halls of Europa, where composers created symphonies that could only be properly heard through the ice moon's unique acoustic properties. As we talked, I realized that Nyra was gradually letting her formal aristocratic facade slip. Her descriptions became more personal, her observations more candid. The condescension that had colored our early interactions had all but disappeared. Eventually, exhaustion overcame us. I fell asleep to the soft ambient glow of Nyra's crystals and the nebula swirling above. I woke to the sound of movement. Morning, by station time, though in the observatory the only indication was the increased external lighting visible through the dome. Nyra stood at one of the workstations, examining what appeared to be her spice samples from Kryos. "Sleep well?" I asked, stretching to relieve the stiffness from sleeping on the hard floor. "Adequately," she replied, not looking up from her work. "I'm analyzing the cellular structure of the Kryos bloom. The toxin exposure on the planet may have altered some of the compounds." I joined her at the workstation, curious. The sample container had been opened, and small crystalline fragments lay on a portable analysis tablet she must have carried with her. "These compounds," she explained, pointing to a molecular structure displayed on the screen, "react differently based on the biology of whoever consumes them. For humans, they might create a sensation of warmth followed by a complex sweetness. For Lumari, they produce something closer to what you might call harmonic resonance, a flavor that seems to create sound. Synesthesia in a spice," I marveled. "No wonder they're valuable. More than valuable. Unique." She closed the container carefully. "My family has traded in rare compounds for generations. But these," she paused, searching for words, "these could revolutionize both our industries." Her comment caught me off guard. "Both our industries. Consider the applications in your field," she said, turning to face me fully. "These compounds don't just affect taste. They create cross-sensory experiences that vary by species. Integrated into entertainment formats, they could transform passive observation into active participation. The possibility had honestly never occurred to me. A true fusion of taste and experience." Exactly. For the first time since I'd met her, genuine enthusiasm animated her features. Her crystals brightened, pulsing in complex patterns that seemed to emphasize her excitement. We spent the morning discussing potential applications, how her family's expertise in rare compounds could enhance the entertainment experiences I sourced. The conversation flowed naturally, professional barriers dissolving as we explored ideas that bridged our separate worlds. For lunch, we shared more of my emergency rations. Nyra demonstrated how her crystalline biology allowed her to detect flavor complexities invisible to humans, analyzing the nutrient bars with amusement. "This contains 17 distinct synthetic compounds designed to mimic the taste of actual food," she said, holding a bite-sized piece up to examine it. "Yet they miss the crucial harmonic resonance that makes real food satisfying. It's like listening to music with several notes missing. That explains why I'm never actually satisfied after eating them." I laughed. "I just thought it was psychological." Perception is biochemistry, she replied simply. Your body knows the difference, even if your conscious mind doesn't. I described sensory entertainment experiences I'd curated for various clients. Immersive environments that combined visual, auditory, and tactile elements to create memorable experiences. Our jobs aren't so different, Nyra realized aloud, her initial condescension completely gone. We both seek experiences that transcend ordinary perception. Just different senses, I agreed. You work with taste and smell. I work with sight and sound, and touch, she added, thoughtfully. The tactile dimension is crucial to complete sensory integration. Something in her tone made me glance up. Her crystals had changed to a pattern I hadn't seen before. More subdued but somehow more intense, concentrated along her cheekbones and forehead. The afternoon passed quietly. We monitored station communications, confirmed that Sensoria's search was continuing, but hadn't extended to the outer ring yet, and discussed potential next steps once it was safe to leave our hiding place. By the second evening of our seclusion, something fundamental had changed between us. The professional facade that had defined our early interactions had cracked, revealing more complex individuals beneath. As we shared another simple meal, I found myself speaking more honestly than I had in years. I'm growing disillusioned with my work, I admitted, staring up at the nebula. I started with such ideals, bringing unique cultural experiences to people who would appreciate them, ensuring artists received fair compensation for their work. But lately it feels like I'm just providing fleeting distractions for the wealthy. Nyra listened silently, her crystals pulsing in what I now recognized as a pattern of attention and consideration. The artists still get paid, she pointed out gently. Their work still reaches audiences, even if those audiences are privileged. True, but the meaning gets lost in the transaction, I sighed. It becomes another luxury product, consumed and forgotten. The transformative potential of art deserves better. She was quiet for a long moment. I understand your ambivalence. My family's expectations weigh similarly on me. I turned to look at her, surprised by her candor. They've already selected 3 potential marriage partners from prominent trading houses, she explained, her crystals dimming slightly. Strategic alliances to strengthen our position in the spice market. My personal preferences are considered secondary. An arranged marriage. In this era, tradition remains powerful among the Lumari houses, she said, especially for daughters expected to continue the family line. I couldn't imagine having my future planned out to that degree. Do you get any say in the decision? Some. Limited veto power, essentially. Her crystals reflected the nebula light. But refusal without good reason is seen as selfishness, putting individual desires above family interests. What would constitute a good reason? I asked. Her crystals changed to that unusual pattern I'd noticed earlier, concentrated, intense. Finding a more advantageous alliance would be acceptable. Or, she hesitated. There are certain biological compatibility factors that can override arranged pairings, but they're extremely rare. Something in her tone suggested she was deliberately avoiding specifics, but I didn't press. Instead, I changed the subject. The main telescope should still work, I said, nodding toward the observatory's centerpiece. Want to take a closer look at the nebula? Her expression brightened. You know how to operate it? Basic functions at least. I stood and approached the massive telescope's control panel. After a few minutes of familiarizing myself with the outdated interface, I managed to power up the ancient system. The telescope buzzed to life, mechanisms adjusting as it oriented toward the coordinates I entered. A large display screen flickered on, showing a magnified view of the nebula section directly above us. Nyra joined me at the control panel, genuine wonder in her expression as the image clarified. The nebula's intricate structures appeared in stunning detail, gas filaments intertwining, newborn stars gleaming through cosmic dust, regions where radiation created impossible colors. It's extraordinary, she whispered. We trade in materials from these regions but rarely stop to appreciate their origin. I adjusted the focus, bringing a particularly beautiful formation into sharper relief. Nyra leaned closer to the controls, reaching to fine-tune one of the settings. Our hands touched on the adjustment dial. Unlike our previous contacts, brief and often in moments of crisis, neither of us pulled away. Her crystalline skin felt cool against mine but not uncomfortable. A subtle vibration passed between us, almost like a current. I glanced at Nyra and caught my breath. Her entire crystalline structure had transformed. Patterns of light rippled across her skin in waves, creating an iridescence that seemed to radiate from within. The effect was mesmerizing, colors changing through spectrums I could barely comprehend, intensifying around where our hands touched. "What does that pattern mean?" I asked softly, unable to look away. She withdrew her hand abruptly, turning away. The remarkable display diminished immediately, though traces of the pattern lingered along her neck and cheekbones. "Nothing of consequence," she said, her voice controlled but with an undercurrent I couldn't identify. "Just a physiological response to environmental stimuli." She moved away from the telescope, creating distance between us. Her crystals gradually returned to their normal luminosity, though not before I noticed how the patterns seemed to resist the change, like waves reluctantly receding from shore. "Nyra," I began, unsure what I even wanted to say. "We should rest," she interrupted firmly. "Tomorrow we need to formulate a plan to expose Sensoria's operations while avoiding their security forces." Her tone made it clear the moment had passed, but something significant had happened, something she wasn't prepared to discuss. I respected her boundary, turning back to power down the telescope. For the second night, we shared the thermal blanket in silence, more conscious of each other's proximity than before. Above us the nebula continued its slow cosmic dance, indifferent to the smaller, more human complexities unfolding beneath its vast expanse. As I drifted towards sleep, I realized that the distance between our worlds had narrowed in ways neither of us had anticipated. Whatever her crystal patterns had revealed, whatever was developing between us, had become impossible to ignore. Whether we had 2 days or 2 years together, something fundamental had changed in that observatory dome, something neither of us had planned for. The third morning in our observatory hideout brought a new kind of tension. I woke to find Nyra already up, standing rigid near the view screen. The colored light from the nebula played across her crystalline features, but the usual wonder I'd seen in her expression had been replaced by something harder. Her personal communicator, a sleek Lumari device she'd kept powered down to avoid detection, was active in her hand. The screen pulsed with symbols I couldn't read, but their effect on Nyra was unmistakable. Her crystals had dimmed to a muted blue, the patterns moving in what I now recognized as distress. "Bad news?" I asked, sitting up and pushing the thermal blanket aside. Nyra's jaw tightened. "My family. They've dispatched a trade convoy to Helios Station. They'll arrive in 12 hours. I stood and crossed to her side, careful to maintain a respectful distance after last night's moment by the telescope. "That's sooner than you expected. They're demanding my immediate return." Her voice remained controlled, but her crystals showed her turmoil. "The message specifies that I am to abandon my—" She paused, looking at me. "Embarrassing association with a human entertainers and resume proper duties to House Voss." The dismissive phrasing stung more than I wanted to admit. "Your family has a way with words. This directive comes directly from my father." Nyra shut down the communicator with a sharp gesture. "He's personally leading the delegation." I moved to my pack and began gathering our limited supplies. "So we have 12 hours to expose Sensoria's operation before your family complicates things." My thoughts exactly. While I packed, Nyra contacted one of my underworld sources using a secure channel I'd established. The news confirmed our suspicions. Sensoria security teams were methodically searching the station, working their way outward from the central rings. "They've covered 60% of the residential and commercial areas," Nyra reported, closing the connection. "Their search pattern suggests they'll reach this sector within 6 hours." I sealed my pack and slung it over my shoulder. "Then we'd better move before they find us." "We need a plan," Nyra said, her practical nature reasserting itself. "Running won't solve our problem." I might know someone who can help, but reaching him means leaving our sanctuary. Nyra straightened, her decision made. We need to move against Sensoria before my family arrives. I won't leave without clearing my name and securing the evidence of their sabotage. Her determination reminded me why I'd grown to admire her. Nyra possessed a core of steel that matched any I'd encountered in my years of borderline legal operations. We left the observatory through a maintenance passage I'd identified during our first day. The route bypassed main corridors, taking us through service tunnels rarely used except by repair crews. The air reeked of machine oil and recycled oxygen, unlike the fresh atmosphere of the observatory. "This contact of yours," Nyra asked as we navigated a particularly narrow section, "can he be trusted?" "Chief Reeves runs station security, and he's no fan of corporate overreach. 2 years ago I helped him recover some personal items that went missing during a transfer from Mars. He's been reasonably grateful ever since." Reasonably. He didn't arrest me the last 3 times he could have, which in my business counts as friendship. We emerged in a quieter section of the administration ring where Helios Station's governance took place. Compared to the commercial areas, this section was subdued, muted colors, officials moving with purpose, security checkpoints, staffed by personnel wearing the station's official blue-gray uniforms. I led Nyra to a side entrance marked Station Personnel Only, and used an access code I shouldn't have known. The door opened to a sparse corridor leading to security operations. Chief Reeves was exactly where I expected, hunched over his desk in a glass-walled office, scowling at reports on multiple screens. A stocky Martian with the telltale reddish skin tone of someone born in the low gravity of Mars's southern settlements. Reeves had a reputation for incorruptibility that made him both respected and isolated on a station where influence trading was standard practice. His head jerked up when we entered. Surprise quickly replaced by wariness. "Mercer," he growled, "your timing is terrible. I've got Sensoria breathing down my neck about 2 fugitives they claim stole corporate secrets." "Funny coincidence," I replied, taking a seat across from him without waiting for an invitation. "We're here about Sensoria too." Nyra remained standing, her presence commanding attention despite Reeves' initial focus on me. I noticed how the chief's expression changed as he registered her crystalline features and formal bearing. "House Voss," he said, recognizing the distinctive crystal patterns. "This complicates things." Chief Reeves. Nyra acknowledged him with a slight nod, neither deferential nor condescending. "We have evidence that Sensoria attempted to murder me on Kryos. They sabotaged my shuttle, leaving me to die from toxic exposure." Reeves leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. "That's a serious accusation against a corporation that pays substantial station fees." "It's also true," I added, "and part of a larger operation. Sensoria is attempting to monopolize both the rare spice trade and the entertainment sector by eliminating independent operators." For the next 30 minutes, we presented our case: the shuttle sabotage, the surveillance data we gathered at the reception, the connections between Sensoria's security firm and recent accidents befalling competitors. Reeves listened without interruption, his lined face revealing nothing. When we finished, he tapped a security override into his console, engaging privacy protocols that would prevent recording or monitoring of our conversation. "I've had suspicions about Sensoria for months," he admitted. "Unusual security deployments. Personnel with military backgrounds rather than corporate protection training. Restricted access requests for station systems. Will you help us?" Nyra asked directly. Reeves studied her. Then me, weighing his options. "Official action requires official evidence. What you've presented is compelling but circumstantial. We need access to their internal systems," I explained. "The real evidence will be in their secure files. And you expect me to authorize a break-in of corporate offices?" Reeves shook his head. "That would end my career." "Not authorization," Nyra countered. "Just the means to acquire evidence legally." Reeves' eyebrows rose. "Legally, temporary security credentials," I explained. "Access to the station's surveillance network. We can do the rest. The chief fell silent, considering the request. Finally he reached into his desk and extracted 2 security badges unlike the standard issue. These are investigator credentials, he explained, sliding them across the desk. They grant limited access to station systems for the purpose of pursuing security concerns. Officially, you're independent contractors performing a security assessment. I picked up one of the badges. This gets us into Sensoria's section. It gets you into the station's surveillance archives and security feeds. What you do with that information is your business. Reeves locked eyes with me. But if you're caught breaking any station ordinances, I'll deny issuing these credentials. Understood, Nyra said, taking the second badge. One more thing, Reeves added, his voice lowering. Whatever you're planning, do it soon. Sensoria's chief of security requested permission to expand their search parameters to include restricted areas. I've delayed approval, but I can only hold them off for another 10 hours at most. As we turned to leave, Reeves called out one final comment. Mercer, try not to destroy any station property this time. I grinned. No promises, Chief. We left security headquarters and found a small analysis room nearby. One of many such spaces scattered throughout the administrative ring, designed for officials to review data in privacy. Using our temporary credentials, I accessed the station's surveillance network, while Nyra monitored the corridor outside. Got it, I said after 20 minutes of searching through security feeds. Nyra Voss, head of acquisitions and special projects for Sensoria. Nyra moved to look over my shoulder at the display. The screen showed a tall woman with augmented eyes that glowed faintly blue, the same executive we'd seen at the reception. She's accessed restricted shipping manifests for Kryos 12 times in the past month, I explained, scrolling through the data. And look at this. Communications traffic between her office and a security firm called Obsidian Shield, dated just before your shuttle was sabotaged. That's not conclusive, Nyra pointed out. No, but this might be. I pulled up another file. Vex maintains a private office in Sensoria's corporate suite on the Commerce Ring. According to station maintenance records, she's had it retrofitted with enhanced security and a separate server system not connected to the main station grid. Difficult to access, Nyra observed. But not impossible, I smiled. Already formulating a plan. Especially with these credentials and your family name. By midday we had worked out our approach. Sensoria occupied a significant portion of the Commerce Ring, with Vex's private offices located near the executive suite. Our security credentials would get us into the general areas, but accessing her private files would require more direct methods. We made our way to the Commerce Ring, Nyra once again in her formal Lumari attire to emphasize her status. I dressed in nondescript business clothing, the kind worn by thousands of mid-level functionaries throughout the station. With our security badges displayed prominently, we passed several checkpoints without incident. The Sensoria corporate entrance featured a sweeping lobby designed to impress soaring ceilings, holographic displays of exotic worlds, and subtle aromatherapy that adjusted to each visitor's species. A receptionist seated at a crystalline desk looked up as we approached. Lady Voss, the receptionist said, immediately recognizing Nyra's distinctive features. We weren't aware you had scheduled a meeting today. That's because I didn't, Nyra replied with aristocratic confidence. House Voss is considering Sensoria's latest partnership proposal. I'm here to evaluate your operations personally before taking the offer to my father. The receptionist hesitated, clearly not prepared for an unscheduled visit from a potential major partner. I should contact Director Vex's office. That won't be necessary, Nyra interrupted smoothly. My father expects my independent assessment. External supervision would defeat the purpose. She gestured to our security badges. The station administration has already cleared our access for the evaluation. I remained silent, letting Nyra's natural authority carry us through. After a moment's hesitation, the receptionist cleared us for entry, providing visitor passes that would grant access to the general corporate areas. We moved through the main offices with purpose, as if we belonged there, Sensoria employees glanced at us with curiosity, but didn't challenge our presence. Our security badges and Nyra's unmistakable Lumari aristocratic bearing created a bubble of deference around us. Vex's private office is on the executive level, I murmured as we entered a lift. According to the building schematics, there's a service corridor that runs behind the executive suite. The lift carried us upward. When the doors opened, we stepped into a hushed corridor of obvious wealth. Genuine wood paneling, artworks from distant worlds, and subtle security measures integrated into the architecture. We located the service corridor entrance disguised as a decorative panel. My security credentials granted us access, and we found ourselves in the utilitarian passageway that serviced the executive offices. Vex's private server should be accessible through the environmental control system, I explained, examining the maintenance panel. These high-ranking executives always want personal climate settings, which means dedicated systems. Working quickly, I bypassed the basic security on the environmental controls, accessing the network that regulated temperature, humidity, and lighting in Vex's office. She's not currently inside, I confirmed, checking the biosensor readings. Perfect timing. Using the maintenance access, we entered Vex's office through a concealed panel designed for repair crews. The space reflected its owner's personality, meticulously organized, with sleek furnishings and display screens showing commodity prices and shipping schedules. A separate workstation stood in the corner, physically isolated from the main office systems. The private server, Nyra identified, moving toward it. We have maybe 10 minutes before security protocols notice the environmental override, I warned, joining her at the workstation. The system required biometric authentication, but I'd anticipated this. From my pack I withdrew a small device, technically illegal on most stations, that could mimic recently recorded biometric patterns. Sensoria's reception had given me the opportunity to capture Vex's retinal patterns when she'd greeted various guests. The system accepted the spoofed authentication, and files appeared on the display. Download everything, Nyra urged, keeping watch near the door. We can sort through it later. I inserted a high-capacity data chip and initiated a complete system copy. Progress indicators showed the transfer proceeding rapidly but not instantaneously. Found something, I said, opening files while the download continued. Operation Prism. It's a comprehensive plan to control the Arcadian Nebula trade routes. Nyra joined me, her eyes scanning the document. They're targeting all independent operators, not just my family's spice trade, but every entertainment broker, including you. And here's the shuttle sabotage, I added, opening another file. Direct orders from Vex to the security team on Kryos. They were instructed to make it look like equipment failure. The download reached 80% completion when the first alarm sounded, a subtle chime that indicated security protocols had detected unauthorized access. We need to move, Nyra said, tension evident in her voice. Almost there, I replied, watching the progress indicator crawl toward completion. 95%, 98%. The office door slid open. We froze as a security team entered, weapons raised. Don't move, the lead officer commanded. Hands where we can see them. I raised my hands slowly, positioning myself between the security team and the workstation. The download indicator flashed completion, but I couldn't risk reaching for the data chip. This is a misunderstanding, I began, using my most reasonable tone. We're conducting a security assessment for Station Chief Reeves. Save it for Director Vex, the officer replied. She's on her way now. Nyra's eyes met mine across the room, a silent communication passing between us. Her crystal patterns had changed to a configuration I recognized from our previous escapes, alert, prepared for action. Without warning, Nyra slammed her hand against the environmental control panel on the wall. The office lights flickered and died as emergency protocols engaged. In the momentary darkness, I grabbed the data chip and dove for the service panel we'd used to enter. Weapons fire erupted behind us, energy pulses striking the wall. We scrambled through the maintenance passage, alarms blaring throughout the executive level. Security breach on executive level 3, an automated voice announced over the station's communication system. All personnel initiate containment procedures. We ran through the service corridor, taking a maintenance lift down to avoid the secured main elevators. Security teams would be converging on all standard exits. We need to reach the main security office, I panted as we emerged on a lower level. Get this evidence to Reeves before Sensoria can cover it up. Nyra consulted a station map on her communicator. This way. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to the administration ring. We reached a junction point where several service corridors intersected. As we turned the corner, energy pulses struck the wall above our heads. 3 Sensoria security officers had cut off our intended escape route. "Get down," I shouted, pulling Nyra behind a power distribution node for cover. More energy pulses scorched the wall beside us, leaving smoldering marks on the metal. I drew my own compact energy pistol, another item technically prohibited on the station but essential in my line of work. "Since when do corporate security teams use military-grade weapons?" Nyra asked, pressed against the machinery beside me. "Since they're not really corporate security," I replied, returning fire around the edge of our cover. My shot caught one of the officers in the shoulder, sending him spinning backward. The remaining officers intensified their attack, forcing us deeper into cover. Energy pulses superheated the air around us, the acrid smell of melting circuitry filling the corridor. "We're pinned down," I admitted, checking my weapon's charge. 3, maybe 4 more shots before this is drained. Nyra's crystals pulsed with determined patterns. "Can we reach that junction?" She nodded toward a narrower passage about 10 meters away. "Not without drawing fire." I assessed our limited options as another volley struck our cover. The realization of our precarious situation suddenly clarified everything. If we didn't make it out, all our evidence would be lost. Nyra would never clear her name or protect her family's business. And I would never get to tell her what I'd realized over these past days. I turned to her, meeting her intense purple eyes. "Nyra, if we don't survive this, I need to tell you something." The words hung between us, unfinished. Her crystalline features caught the emergency lighting, creating patterns of shadow and luminescence across her face. "Tell me after," she replied, her voice firm but with unexpected warmth. Then she did something that stunned me. She reached out and grasped my hand. The contact was deliberately initiated, not accidental or practical like our previous touches. Her cool crystalline fingers interlocked with mine, and immediately her entire body responded. Her skin illuminated with the same pattern I'd seen briefly in the observatory, waves of color rippling outward from where our hands joined, creating a luminescent display so intense it cast shadows on the walls around us. Nyra looked down at their joined hands with genuine shock, as if her body's reaction surprised even her eyes. The crystal patterns pulsed with a distinctive rhythm I'd never seen before, concentrated and powerful. Before I could ask what it meant, the sound of approaching footsteps sounded from behind us, louder and more numerous than our pursuers. Nyra released my hand reluctantly, her crystals slowly returning to their normal luminosity. "Station security, hold your fire," a commanding voice shouted. Energy pulses from a new direction struck the Sensoria security team. Official Helios Station security forces had arrived, their blue-gray uniforms visible as they advanced down the corridor, forcing the corporate agents to retreat. Chief Reeves himself appeared, moving with surprising agility for his bulk. "Secure the area," he ordered his team before approaching our position. "Your definition of not destroying station property needs work, Mercer," he growled, eyeing the scorched walls and damaged equipment. I stood, helping Nyra to her feet. "We didn't start the firefight, Chief, but you did break into corporate offices," he countered, though without real anger. "Tell me it was worth it." I handed him the data chip, everything you need to bring down Sensoria's operation in this sector. Documented proof of shuttle sabotage, corporate espionage, and market manipulation. Reeves accepted the chip with a nod. "My office. Now, we need to process this immediately before their legal team starts throwing their weight around." As we began to follow him, Nyra's communicator emitted a distinctive alert tone. She pulled it from her pocket, her crystals immediately dimming in a pattern I now recognized as distress. "What is it?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Nyra's eyes met mine, conflicted emotions visible in their purple depths. "My family's delegation. They've arrived early. The time we had carefully calculated, already compressed by Sensoria's pursuit, had just run out completely. Sometime later, Reeves' office buzzed with activity. Station security officers moved with purpose, processing the evidence we'd extracted from Sensoria's systems. The chief himself stood at the center of operations, issuing rapid-fire commands as data from our chip displayed across multiple screens. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My attention remained fixed on Nyra, her communicator still in her hand, her crystals pulsing in patterns that betrayed her inner conflict. "How early?" I asked, moving to her side. "They've already docked." Her voice remained controlled, but I'd learned to read the subtle changes in her crystal patterns. My father expedited their journey using diplomatic clearance. That complicates things. An understatement. She tucked the communicator away. "I have perhaps 2 hours before their envoy tracks my location. My father is not known for his patience." Reeves approached us. "The evidence is conclusive. Sensoria's operations violate at least 17 station ordinances and 6 interstellar commerce laws." He nodded toward the largest display screen, where documents from Vex's private server scrolled in damning sequence. "We're convening an emergency session of the Station Council. They need to see this immediately." "When?" I asked. "1 hour. The Grand Assembly Chamber." Reeves handed me a security clearance card with official station markings. "You'll both need to testify. Your first-hand experiences complete the picture these documents paint." Nyra straightened, the mention of duty seeming to center her. "We'll be there, Chief Reeves." "Good. I've assigned a security detail to escort you. Sensoria still has operatives on the station." As Reeves turned away, Nyra caught my arm. "Dash, my family, will have to wait," I finished for her. "Exposing Sensoria comes first. Your family values trade agreements, right? Show them you protected House Voss's interests." She considered this, her crystals changing to a more focused pattern. "A strategic approach. My father respects results, if not necessarily my methods." We used the hour to prepare our testimony, organizing the evidence into a coherent narrative, while station security maintained a protective perimeter around Reeves' office. I noticed Nyra repeatedly checking her communicator, where messages from her family accumulated, unanswered. "They're demanding my immediate presence," she admitted when she caught me watching. "And yet here you are." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Perhaps your disregard for protocol has influenced me." "I'm a terrible influence," I agreed, returning her smile. When the hour expired, our security escort arrived to guide us to the Grand Assembly Chamber, located at Helios Station's heart. We entered through a side entrance, avoiding the main corridors where Sensoria might have placed observers. The chamber's architecture impressed even me, despite my years of curating exotic experiences. Concentric rings of seating descended toward a central speaking platform, accommodating representatives from every major faction and trading house operating on Helios. The transparent ceiling showed the nebula above, its colors moving gently in cosmic currents. Station council members already occupied the innermost ring. Chief Reeves stood near the central platform, conferring with what appeared to be station legal advisors. Beyond them the chamber had filled with observers, representatives from trading houses, corporate entities, and independent operators all recognized that something significant was unfolding. My experienced eye identified figureheads from at least 8 major commercial interests, and in a reserved section to my right, a delegation that could only be Nyra's family. Even without her direct identification, I would have recognized them. 6 Lumari. Their formal attire outshone even the wealthiest executives present, with fabrics that seemed to capture and amplify light. At their center sat an older Lumari male, whose crystalline features had hardened into sharp defined edges. His purple eyes, identical to Nyra's, surveyed the chamber with calculated assessment. When his look landed on us, his crystals pulsed once in what I interpreted as displeasure. "My father," Nyra confirmed softly, "and senior representatives of House Voss." Before I could respond, Reeves approached us. "You're up first, Mercer. Establish the context, then Lady Voss will provide the evidence of direct targeting of her family's operations." "Understood." The chamber quieted as we moved toward the central platform. Counselors straightened in their seats, and conversation faded to expectant silence. From the corner of my eye, I saw security personnel escort several Sensoria executives, including Nyra Voss, to a designated area where they could observe but not interfere. I stepped onto the platform first, the station's acoustic design carrying my voice effortlessly through the space. Counselors, representatives, citizens of Helios Station, I began. More formal than my usual style but appropriate for the venue. My name is Dash Mercer. I have uncovered a conspiracy that threatens not just individual businesses but the foundation of free commerce in this region. For the next 20 minutes, I detailed my experiences finding Nyra stranded on Kryos, discovering evidence of sabotage, connecting the dots to Sensoria's systematic efforts to monopolize both entertainment and spice markets. By eliminating independent operators, I kept my language precise, focusing on established facts rather than conjecture. Station counselors interrupted occasionally with clarifying questions, which I answered directly, building credibility with each exchange. When I completed my portion, I gestured to Nyra. Lady Nyra Voss of House Voss will now present evidence of directed sabotage against her family's legitimate trading operations. Nyra stepped forward. I moved aside but remained on the platform, offering silent support as she began her testimony. Esteemed counselors, she addressed them with practiced diplomatic precision. House Voss has traded fairly in the Arcadian sector for 12 generations. We have honored all agreements, paid all tariffs, and contributed to the stability and prosperity of regions including Helios Station. She continued, methodically presenting evidence that Sensoria had specifically targeted her family's operations. She showed communications detailing their failed acquisition attempts, followed by the direct orders to eliminate her on Kryos when legitimate business approaches failed. As she spoke, I watched her father's reaction. The elder Voss remained outwardly impassive, but his crystals betrayed increasing agitation, not at Sensoria, I realized, but at Nyra herself, for handling the situation without consulting her family. When Nyra concluded her testimony, the council's chief administrator rose to address the chamber. The evidence presented is disturbing and comprehensive. If verified by our independent analysts, it represents the most significant violation of commerce regulations in Helios Station's history. One by one, councilors expressed their concerns, building toward consensus. Meanwhile, station security personnel moved to surround the Sensoria executives, clearly preparing to take them into custody. Nyra Voss suddenly stood, her augmented eyes flashing with anger. This is absurd. House Voss has manipulated evidence to protect their trading monopoly. These accusations are documented in your own private server. Director Voss, Reeves interrupted, his voice carrying across the chamber, including your direct orders regarding Lady Voss's shuttle. The chamber erupted in murmurs as security officers moved to detain Voss and her associates. The chief administrator raised a hand for silence. By unanimous decision of the station council, all Sensoria assets within Helios jurisdiction are hereby frozen pending full investigation. Corporate representatives will be detained for questioning. Operation of Sensoria facilities will transfer temporarily to station oversight. The decision prompted a wave of reaction throughout the chamber. Relief from independent operators, calculation from competing corporations, and formal acknowledgement from the various trading houses represented. As the formal proceedings concluded, Nyra and I stepped down from the platform. Almost immediately, a Lumari aide from her family's delegation approached, bowing slightly to Nyra, while pointedly ignoring me. Your father requests your immediate presence, Lady Voss, the aide stated. The family transport departs in 40 minutes. Nyra's crystals pulsed with what I now recognized as resignation. Tell my father, I will join him shortly. I must conclude my business here first. The aide hesitated, before nodding and returning to the Voss delegation. I watched as he conveyed the message to Nyra's father, whose crystalline features hardened further with obvious displeasure. 40 minutes, I said quietly. Not much time for goodbyes, I know. Nyra turned to me, her purple eyes meeting mine directly. My family will expect a full accounting of these events. They'll also expect me to resume my duties immediately. We moved away from the chamber's center, finding temporary privacy in a small antechamber. Through the doorway, I could see station security processing the Sensoria executives, while council members discussed next steps. So this is where we part ways, Nyra said. her voice formal though her crystal patterns betrayed deeper emotions. You have secured your entertainment contacts, and I have protected my family's trading interests. That's one way to look at it. I studied her, memorizing the unique configurations of her crystalline features. Or we could consider an alternative. Her head tilted slightly. What alternative exists? My family has survived for generations by adapting to changing markets. Nyra, the samples you showed me from Kryos, the compounds your family trades, they have applications far beyond traditional spice markets. From my pocket, I withdrew a small data tablet and activated it, showing her the analysis results from her own spice samples. I'd run the tests during our time in the observatory, curious about potential applications beyond what either of us had initially considered. These compounds can enhance sensory experiences in ways neither of us imagined, I explained, scrolling through the results. Your biochemical knowledge combined with my entertainment connections could create something revolutionary, experiences that engage all senses simultaneously, customized to different physiologies. Nyra studied the data, her crystal patterns changing to indicate focused consideration. A business partnership, she asked cautiously. I took a deep breath, risking everything on instinct. I was thinking of something more permanent. Her crystals instantly pulsed with an intense pattern, colors rippling across her skin in waves. She looked up from the tablet, searching my face. Dash, my family has expectations. Arrangements have been discussed with other houses. I know. I stepped closer, not touching her but reducing the distance between us. But these past days have shown us something unexpected, haven't they? Whatever this is between us, it's not something either of us planned for. Her crystals continued their complex display, concentrated particularly around her face and neck. There are traditions, obligations. There are also choices, I countered gently. I'm not asking you to abandon your family or heritage. I'm suggesting we could build something that honors both our worlds while creating something new. Nyra's internal conflict played out across her crystalline features. I waited, giving her space to process what I was proposing. Outside in the chamber, I could see her father watching us, his displeasure evident even at a distance. What you're suggesting would be unprecedented, she finally said. A Lumari aristocrat and a human entertainer. Most innovations start as unprecedented ideas. I smiled. Consider it a unique market opportunity. This earned a small smile in return, her crystals brightening briefly. The moment hung between us, full of possibilities and constraints. Then without warning, Nyra reached out and took my hand deliberately. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. Her entire crystalline structure transformed, illuminating with a pattern unlike any I'd seen before, more intense, more coherent, as if every element of her biology had aligned in harmonic resonance. The light radiated outward from where our hands joined, creating luminescent waves that seemed to pulse in synchrony between us. I heard gasps from the chamber doorway. Looking over, I saw Nyra's family members staring in shock, her father actually standing from his seat, his own crystals responding with patterns of disbelief. What's happening? I asked softly, mesmerized by the display. Resonance recognition, Nyra whispered, sounding equally astonished. The rarest form of Lumari physiological response. It occurs only when, she paused, searching for words. When we encounter our life complement. It's considered philosophical mythology by most modern Lumari. Like soulmates, I suggested. A simplified comparison, but essentially correct. Her crystals continued their remarkable display. It's documented in our oldest histories, but few living Lumari have witnessed it, much less experienced it. Before I could respond, her father entered the antechamber, his crystalline features rigid with controlled emotion. The other family members remained at the doorway, watching with expressions ranging from shock to curiosity. Daughter, he addressed Nyra formally, though his eyes remained fixed on our joined hands and the extraordinary light patterns emanating from her skin. Your transport awaits. We must depart immediately. Nyra straightened, her hand still firmly in mine. Father, I must discuss an alternative arrangement with you. There is nothing to discuss. Family obligations must sometimes yield to greater imperatives, she finished for him, her voice gaining strength. You recognize the resonance pattern. You know what it signifies. Her father's expression changed through several emotions before settling into reluctant acknowledgement. It has not been observed in 3 generations. Yet here it is, unmistakable. Nyra's crystals pulsed with new confidence. I propose a new trading partnership between House Voss and the entertainment sector Mr. Mercer represents. The market applications of our family compounds extend far beyond traditional spice trading. Her father's calculated assessment was nearly visible as he weighed tradition against opportunity, family expectations against biological reality. Show me, he commanded. After a long moment. For the next 20 minutes Nyra presented our concept, a revolutionary approach to sensory entertainment that integrated Kryos compounds into immersive experiences, tailored to different species' physiologies. Her father listened with increasing interest as she outlined potential markets, profit margins, and competitive advantages. I contributed occasionally, adding details about distribution networks and entertainment venues, but mostly I watched Nyra change before my eyes. She was now a visionary businesswoman whose understanding of both her family's trade and my entertainment world created something genuinely innovative. When she finished, her father remained silent for several moments. Finally he addressed me directly for the first time. Mr. Mercer, your reputation precedes you. Not all aspects of it are reassuring. I imagine not, sir, I replied honestly. But I believe results speak louder than reputations. Indeed, his crystals changed in what might have been reluctant amusement, and the results my daughter has achieved, even in these irregular circumstances, are significant. He turned back to Nyra, his expression softening slightly. The resonance cannot be denied, however inconvenient its timing or unconventional its object. House Voss has always adapted to changing markets. Perhaps this represents the next evolution. Nyra's crystals brightened with hope. Then you approve. I reserve judgment on the personal aspects, he replied carefully. But the business concept merits exploration. I will assign resources and support for a trial period of 1 standard year. It wasn't unconditional approval, but it was far more than I'd expected. Nyra's grip tightened briefly on mine, her crystals pulsing with barely contained excitement. Thank you, Father. He nodded once, then addressed us both. I expect regular reports and demonstrable progress. House Voss does not tolerate failures, regardless of biological considerations. With that he turned and rejoined the family delegation, already issuing instructions to his aides. I overheard enough to understand he was arranging for some family representatives to remain on Helios while the main delegation returned to Lumari. When we were alone again I turned to Nyra. Did that just happen? Her laughter was genuine, her crystals sparkling with relief and joy. It appears so, though I suspect my father will send a constant stream of monitoring reports and family observers to ensure our venture succeeds. I can live with that pressure. I squeezed her hand gently. What about you? No regrets about not returning home? Her expression grew serious, though her crystals continued their luminescent display where our hands joined. Home is a relative concept, Dash. For the first time I'm making choices based on my own path rather than predetermined obligations. So what now? Now, she said, a smile returning to her face. We build something neither of us could create alone.